It all started at exactly 7:03 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday evening in Ashford, Colorado. Every single phone buzzed in unison. One notification, one message. From an unknown number, just 3 words: he wasn't innocent. Attached to the message was a photo, grainy and dark, looking like it was taken 2 decades ago. It showed a man standing near the old river bridge, and that man was Mayor Daniel Harper. In Ashford, Daniel Harper was more than just the mayor. He was the town's hero. A decorated war veteran, a major donor to the local church, the sponsor of a dozen scholarships for high school kids. He was the most respected person in town, a symbol of integrity. So, when that message hit, it spread like a digital wildfire. Neighbors started texting each other, screenshots flying from phone to phone. Within minutes, the usual evening chatter on Main Street died down, replaced by a tense, electric silence. People gathered in small, whispering groups, their faces lit by the glow of their screens. Inside his spacious home, Mayor Harper stared at his own phone, a look of complete disbelief on his face. His wife, Maria, stood beside him, her brow furrowed with confusion. "Daniel, what is this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. But Daniel didn't answer. He just kept staring at the image, his face pale. Across town, in a small apartment cluttered with microphones and audio equipment, 28-year-old investigative podcaster Maya Brooks was looking at the same message. Her podcast, Ashford's Echoes, was dedicated to uncovering the town's forgotten stories. But this felt different. As she analyzed the image, her trained eye caught something that everyone else seemed to have missed. The timestamp. It was hidden in the photo's metadata, but it was there. This picture wasn't 20 years old. It was taken just 3 nights ago. She recognized the jacket the man was wearing. It was the same one Mayor Harper wore to the town fair last fall, the one he still owned. Her heart started to beat faster. This wasn't some old, dredged-up rumor from the past. This was happening right now. Just as that thought solidified, the distant wail of sirens cut through the evening air. Looking out her window, Maya saw police cruisers speeding down the street, their lights flashing, heading toward the river bridge. Word had spread that someone had called in an anonymous tip. A crowd was already starting to form, drawn by the drama, their phones held up to record. When the police arrived at the bridge, they found exactly what the tipster had described. Underneath the old wooden structure, in the damp earth, was a patch of recently disturbed soil. The officers started digging. A few minutes later, their shovels hit something hard. A metal box. With cautious hands, they pulled it from the ground and pried it open. Inside, there was a single USB drive and a handwritten note on a folded piece of paper. An officer read the note aloud, his voice amplified by the sudden quiet of the crowd. "If you're reading this, they're lying." It was signed Caleb Monroe. The name hit the crowd like a lightning strike. Caleb Monroe. He was the town's ghost, a teenager who had vanished without a trace 20 years ago. The official story, the one everyone had accepted, was that he ran away. But there were always whispers, late-night theories shared over drinks at the local bar, that suggested something far more sinister. That he didn't just run away. Just then, Mayor Harper arrived on the scene, pushing his way through the crowd. He projected an air of calm authority. "This is a sick prank," he announced, his voice steady and firm. "Someone is trying to tarnish the memory of that poor boy and divide our community." But as he spoke, Maya, who had made her way to the front, noticed something else. The mayor's hands. They were shaking just slightly, but unmistakably. The police chief announced that they were taking the USB drive back to the station for analysis and that a full investigation would begin immediately. But before the officers could even get back to their cars, it happened again. Every phone buzzed. Another message from the same unknown number. This one was even shorter. "Play it." And then, the massive digital billboard in the town square, which usually displayed ads for local businesses, flickered to life. Someone had hacked it. The screen went black, and then a video started playing. It was grainy, night vision, security footage. The time stamp in the corner confirmed it was from 3 nights ago. The video showed the area under the river bridge, and there, in the green-tinged darkness, was Mayor Harper. He was digging, exactly where the police had just found the box. A collective gasp went through the crowd. "That's manipulated. It's fake," Harper shouted, his voice cracking. But the video wasn't finished. The camera zoomed in, focusing on something half buried in the dirt behind him. It was a weathered piece of wood, a small, handmade sign. The letters were faded, but you could just make them out. CM-2006. Caleb Monroe. The year he disappeared. In that moment, the past wasn't just a memory anymore. It was live, playing on a giant screen for the entire town to see. Chaos erupted. People started shouting. Some rushed to defend the mayor, insisting he was being framed. Others screamed for his immediate arrest. It was a town tearing itself apart in real time. But Maya stood frozen, a cold dread washing over her. The scene triggered a distant, buried memory. Her father. He had worked in construction in Ashford for years. She remembered him coming home one night, tired and frustrated, muttering about a recent project. "Some foundations in this town were built too fast," he'd said. "Too many shortcuts." A few months after that, he died in what was officially ruled a work accident. She had never connected the two things before. But now, she felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a random act of revenge. This was a meticulously planned operation. Someone had waited 2 decades, gathering evidence, choosing the perfect moment to strike, and for some reason, they chose tonight. As 2 police officers began to escort Mayor Harper away, telling the crowd it was just for his own safety while they questioned him, he turned his head, his eyes locked with Maya's, and the look he gave her wasn't one of anger or fear. It was a warning, a silent, desperate plea that said, "Stop digging." Before she could even process it, her phone buzzed one more time. But this wasn't a mass message. It was a private one, just for her. The sender was still unknown. "You want the truth? Meet me at 10 p.m. Come alone." Below the message was a location pin, the old water tower, just outside the town limits. Maya looked up from her phone, past the chaos at the bridge, toward the dark horizon where the water tower stood like a lone sentinel. The rest of Ashford thought this was a story about a missing boy and a disgraced mayor. But deep down, a terrifying certainty began to form inside her. This was about something much bigger, something the entire town had collectively decided to forget. And at 7:03 p.m., The silence was finally, irrevocably broken. This was only the beginning. Thank you for watching part 1. If you want to find out what happens next, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss where this story goes. At exactly 10 o'clock at night, Maya parked her car beneath the shadow of the old water tower. The massive structure loomed against the Colorado night sky like something forgotten but not gone. The town lights flickered in the far distance, but out here, it was silent. She checked her phone. No new messages. Not a single signal bar. Whoever had texted her knew this area was a dead zone. Hello? She called out into the darkness, her voice swallowed by the quiet. A flashlight beam snapped on directly behind her. She turned sharply, her pulse racing, her heart jumping into her throat. A man stepped forward slowly, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with tired eyes and a face weathered by time and worry. "My name is Owen Monroe," he said quietly, his voice steady but low. The name hit her with the force of a physical blow. "Caleb Monroe?" she asked, the name of the man she'd been investigating hanging in the air. "My brother," Owen confirmed. The wind whistled softly between them, carrying a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "He didn't run away," Owen continued, his gaze unwavering. "He was preparing to expose something." Maya felt her throat tighten. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a shiver down her spine. Expose what? 20 years ago, before Daniel Harper became mayor, he was part of a development group. They were handling federal funds for a river expansion. Millions of dollars. The bridge project was rushed. Safety reports were altered. Maya's mind flashed back. She remembered the bridge rebuild. The string of accidents, the hushed rumors that had circulated through the town for years. "Caleb found inconsistencies," Owen said, his voice laced with a mix of grief and determination. "He copied files. He was planning to go public with everything he'd found. And then he disappeared," Maya finished for him, the official story echoing in her ears. Owen nodded grimly. "They called it runaway debt. Said he skipped town to escape his problems. But I found his old storage unit last month." He held out a thick manila envelope. Maya took it, her fingers brushing against his. Inside, she found a stack of documents, contracts, bank transfers, falsified inspection records. Several signatures had been circled in bright red ink. Daniel Harper's name appeared over and over again, and then she saw another name, Thomas Brooks. Maya froze, her blood running cold. It was her father's name? He worked on the structural approval, Owen explained carefully, as if sensing the ground shifting beneath her. "I don't think he was part of the fraud. I think he was questioning it. Pushing back." Maya's mind raced, fragments of memory snapping into place. She remembered her father arguing on the phone about load tolerance just the week before his fatal crane accident. She remembered overhearing him mutter to her mother, "If this bridge collapses, it won't be by chance." 3 weeks later, he was dead. The official report called it a mechanical failure. A tragic accident. Her hands trembled as she flipped to the final page in the envelope. A small USB drive was taped securely to the back of the last document. "What's on this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Caleb recorded everything," Owen replied. "Conversations, threats, names. He knew they wouldn't believe paper alone. Suddenly, the glare of headlights appeared on the road behind them. Two dark, unmarked SUVs turned off their beams and rolled quietly toward the water tower, their movements deliberate and unnerving. Owen's face drained of all color. They tracked me. The vehicles stopped. Doors opened with a soft click. 4 men stepped out. They were calm, organized, and definitely not local police. One of them, a silhouette against the distant town lights, called out in a calm, authoritative voice, "Hand over the folder, and this can all end peacefully." Maya's instincts screamed at her to run. Owen's eyes were wide with a mix of fear and resolve. He whispered urgently, "If they take this, the truth dies again. For good." The men began to advance, their footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. In a swift, decisive motion, Owen grabbed Maya's arm and pushed the envelope firmly into her hands. "Run," he commanded, his voice a raw whisper. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second, torn between fleeing and staying. A gunshot cracked through the night air, not aimed at them, but close enough to be a clear and final warning. That was all it took. Maya ran, sprinting toward the dark line of trees behind the tower, her heart slamming against her ribs. She didn't dare look back until she heard shouting and the sickening thud of someone hitting the ground. "Owen," she crouched behind a thick bush, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Peeking through the branches, she watched as they restrained him. It was fast, efficient, silent. One of the men scanned the darkness with a powerful flashlight. The beams swept across the trees, passing just inches above her hiding spot before moving on. After a tense, breathless moment, they dragged Owen toward one of the SUVs. "Where's the drive?" one of them demanded, his voice sharp and cold. Owen didn't answer. They shoved him into the back of the vehicle, and the SUVs drove off without sirens, disappearing back into the night as silently as they had arrived. The silence that followed felt heavier, more suffocating than the fear had been. Once the sound of their engines faded completely, Maya stepped out from her hiding spot. Her phone, now out of the dead zone, suddenly regained signal. Instantly, a flood of notifications lit up the screen. The top headline made her stomach drop. Mayor Harper released insufficient evidence. They were already cleaning up their mess, erasing any trace of the day's events. Then, a new message appeared on her screen, from the same unknown number that had summoned her here. "You should have stayed quiet." Before she could even process it, another message followed. "You're next." Her grip tightened around the envelope. They took Owen. They erased Caleb. They may have silenced her father all those years ago. But now, she had the drive. And this time, the evidence wasn't buried under a bridge or locked away in a forgotten storage unit. It was right here, in her hands. Maya looked back toward the town, where the lights of Ashford glowed peacefully, as if nothing was wrong. They thought fear would stop her. They thought she would run and hide. They were wrong. Because this wasn't just about Caleb Monroe anymore. This was personal. And tomorrow morning, the entire town was going to hear the truth. Thanks for watching. If you're invested in Maya's story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The fight for the truth has just begun. Maya couldn't sleep. She just sat there, at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop. The USB drive was plugged in, and her hands were literally shaking as the files started to load. There were audio recordings, scanned contracts, bank transfers, and one video file. The label on it sent a chill down her spine. If something happens to me, she clicked play. Caleb Monroe's face appeared on the screen. He looked like he was in some kind of storage unit, tired and scared, but his eyes were filled with determination. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice a little shaky, "it means they didn't let me go public." He then laid it all out. He talked about how federal funds meant for the bridge were being funneled into shell companies, how inspection reports were completely faked, and how Mayor Daniel Harper, along with two of his business partners, had personally approved dangerous, unsafe structural shortcuts to save money. Caleb named dates. He listed specific amounts. He even named potential witnesses. But then he said something that made Maya's blood run cold. Thomas Brooks tried to stop it. Her father, he told them the bridge would fail under stress. 2 weeks later, he died. Tears started to well up in Maya's eyes, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated resolve. This was it. This was the missing piece. Caleb's image on the screen continued, his voice urgent. "If they silence me, release everything." And then the video ended. Maya leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding against her ribs. This wasn't just about corruption anymore. This was 20 years of a carefully constructed, suffocating silence. This was murder. Without a second thought, she opened her podcast live streaming software. She scheduled an emergency broadcast for 9 a.m. The title was simple but powerful. Ashford, the Truth. By 8:58 a.m., thousands of people were already in the waiting room. The mysterious texts that had been circulating for days had turned the entire town into a pressure cooker of rumors and suspicion. The mayor's quick release from custody had only thrown gasoline on the fire. Everyone knew something was wrong. 9 o'clock sharp. The light on her camera turned green. She was live. Her face was a mask of calm, her voice steady and clear. "I'm releasing evidence connected to Caleb Monroe's disappearance and the River Bridge Project." Monroe's disappearance and the River Bridge Project. She played the video. She let the town see Caleb's last testament for themselves. Then she played the audio files. Private, recorded conversations where Daniel Harper's voice was unmistakable, discussing risk mitigation and the need to keep certain reports internal. She shared her screen, showing the financial records. The intricate web of shell companies that all trace directly back to Harper's very first development firm. Within minutes, the viewership numbers exploded. It went far beyond just Ashford. Regional news stations started picking up the feed. The live chat was a waterfall of text. "Is this real? Someone called the feds. Arrest him." About 10 minutes into the broadcast, there was a loud knock at her door. Hard, sharp. But Maya didn't flinch. She kept speaking, her voice unwavering as she laid out the timeline of deceit. Another knock, more insistent this time. Then, sirens. But these weren't the sirens of the private security SUVs she'd seen before. These were police cars, state patrol, and behind them, 2 black, unmarked federal vehicles. The chat went insane. "FBI? Is that the FBI?" She angled her laptop just enough so her viewers could see out the window. They saw the flashing lights, the officers in uniform moving with purpose, heading directly for Mayor Harper's house just down the street. Her phone was buzzing non-stop on the table, lighting up with breaking news notifications from every local outlet. Federal authorities investigating Ashford mayor. She swallowed the lump of emotion in her throat and continued, her voice never breaking. For 20 years, this town believed lies. Today, you deserve the truth. A few moments later, the sky above Ashford filled with the thumping sound of helicopter blades. Live news choppers were now broadcasting the same scene unfolding on her street to the entire state. They all watched as Mayor Harper walked out of his house, his hands cuffed behind his back. This time, there would be no quiet release, no dismissal of charges. These were real. Wire fraud, federal embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and, most importantly, reopening the investigation into 2 past deaths. Maya's livestream view count shot past 100,000. She took a deep, steadying breath. "This isn't revenge," she said, her voice now softer, more personal. "This is accountability." Later that afternoon, the confirmation came through official channels. Owen Monroe, Caleb's brother, had been found. He'd been detained by a private security firm but was released as soon as federal agents intervened. He was safe, and he would testify. Caleb's case was officially reopened as a homicide investigation. And the file on her father's fatal accident was being pulled from the archives for re-examination. That night, Ashford didn't feel peaceful. It felt awake. For the first time in years, the town felt alive. Lights in houses stayed on later than usual. Neighbors were out on their porches, talking to each other again, not in fearful whispers, but in open, honest conversation. The thick blanket of silence that had protected the powerful for 2 decades had been torn away. As the sun began to set, painting the water in shades of orange and gold, Maya found herself standing at the old river bridge again. The wind moved gently across the structure, a structure that had held the town's darkest secret for so long. Her phone buzzed one last time. It was an unknown number. But the message was different this time. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was just 2 simple words. Thank you. She looked out over the river, a sense of closure washing over her. Some towns bury their secrets deep, and some secrets are content to wait. But eventually, no matter how long it takes, the truth always finds its way into the daylight. And when it does, it changes everything. Thank you for watching, for being a part of this. The fight for truth is never easy, but it's always worth it. Stay vigilant and never stop asking questions.